Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call the public hearing to order at 6:30, Thursday, November 27th. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the shared territories, the traditional lands of the Lekwungen-speaking people, represented by the Ksepsen and Songhees nations. Just a few rules before we start off here. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to allow any person who believes their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw be given an opportunity to be heard or present written submissions. Council's role at the public hearing is to listen to the public, and we will not answer questions or debate proposals or proposed bylaws, except to provide clarification. No one will be discouraged from making their views known. However, it is important that you restrict your remarks to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. To conduct this process in a fair and equitable manner, following the public hearing, no submissions in any form from the public or the applicant regarding the amendment will be heard or received. And finally, there will be no other opportunities to speak to the bylaw. And before I turn it over to our Deputy Corporate Officer, just would like to state that there were a total of 19 written submissions, some for, some against, and of the 19 written submissions, 6 were actually one person. So in the end, there was 14 written submissions. At this point in time, I would like to ask Heather, our Deputy Corporate Officer, to provide instructions with regards to public participation. Heather, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we begin, here are the public participation instructions for tonight's meeting. During the meeting, electronic participation instructions are displayed on the screen for remote attendees. If you are joining by phone, you will be identified by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If using the Zoom app, you will be identified by your name that you entered. To join the speaker's queue online, just raise your virtual hand in Zoom or press 9 if you are attending by phone. The rules for public input tonight: no sound recordings or presentations are permitted. Please refrain from applause or other expressions of emotion, whether in favor or opposition. Inappropriate language, outbursts, or personal criticisms will not be allowed. Speakers should not debate with one another, and questions should be directed through the chair, who is Mr. Mayor tonight. There will be speaking opportunities. Each participant will have up to 3 opportunities to speak on an item. Each turn is limited to 5 minutes. A timer will signal when your time is up. After the first round, additional rounds will follow until all have spoken. When speaking, please state your name and address for the public record. Indicate whether you support or oppose the proposed amendment. Thank you for your cooperation, and I'll turn the meeting back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And at this time, I'll invite Desiree Givens to introduce the proposed bylaw. Desiree, please.
Thank you, and good evening, Ms. Mayor and Council and members of the public. So the general purpose of the amending bylaw number 1700-14 is to amend the OCP to create the North Latoria Area Plan, which will include land use policies that are specific to the lands within the North Latoria corridor, which includes the following properties: 594 Latoria, 588 Latoria, 586, 576, 568, 560, 554, 546, 542, 538, 532, Latoria, as well as 3580 Wishart and 3584 Wishart Road. So the bylaw also proposes amendments to the neighborhood center land use designation to increase the height from 4 stories to 6 stories and the maximum density from 1.75 floor area ratio or FAR to 2.5 FAR for the lands that are subject to the North Latoria area plan only. It also proposes amendments to the neighborhood hillside land use designation to increase the maximum density from 1.2 FAR to 2.5 FAR for the subject lands only. The bylaw also proposes to amend the following figures within the North Latoria area plan: Figure 8, the land use map, and Figure 20, the form, character, and sustainability development permit map. The notification period for this bylaw for this public hearing was from November 18th and closed today. During this time, the public hearing binder was available digitally on the city website as well as in person, at the front counter. Notices were published in the Goldstream Gazette on November 19th and November 26th. A notice was also published on the city's website on November 18th. Neighborhood notices were also sent to 247 properties within 100 meters of the subject properties, and to date, 19 written submissions have been received. So staff will now prepare or present on the North Latoria area plan itself. I do, yes, thank you. So just for some context, the North Latoria area plan applies to the 13 properties that are shown here on this slide. So that's all the properties at Front Latoria Road, between Veterans Memorial Parkway and Wishart Road. The existing land use designations in the OCP for these properties, as shown here, is mostly neighborhood, hillside, and shoreline, as well as neighborhood center and neighborhood. The neighborhood hillside areas are established neighborhoods within the city of Colwood that support ground-oriented buildings and low-rise buildings up to 6 stories in limited situations where significant environmental benefits can be achieved. The neighborhood center area are small-scale mixed-use centers that support low-rise apartments and mixed-use buildings up to 4 stories. So the local area plan is not intended to replace the existing land use designations. It's intended to supplement them. So the purpose of the local area plan is to set additional policy requirements and direction that will guide future development of the North Latoria corridor. So that development happens in a coordinated way that will protect the environment and support transportation and community needs as the area grows over time. Importantly, the area plan is intended to be a high-level conceptual plan that sets desired direction for future development. It doesn't approve any specific development projects or designs. Specific terms and conditions of development will be negotiated through future rezoning applications as applications come forward. Every project will still require its own rezoning process, and public input, detailed studies, and development agreements. And as rezoning applications are received, they will be reviewed against the policies within this local area plan. So getting into the local area plan, the vision statement for the North Latoria corridor is that it will support balanced growth with diverse housing, green space, and infrastructure, while protecting Latoria Creek and enhancing connectivity to nearby areas. The goals that were created and reflected in the plan reflect what we heard throughout public and stakeholder engagement and include protecting and enhancing the natural environment, enhancing ecological habitat by requiring green space and soft landscaping, encouraging the provision of active transportation facilities, so things like multi-use pathways, bike lanes, and crosswalks, enabling a diverse range of land uses in order to support nearby commercial hubs, improving the function and performance of Latoria Road so that it can accommodate multimodal movements, and ensuring that infrastructure and master planning considers any necessary improvements by defining the protected density for the North Latoria corridor. So the local area plan will be implemented gradually and in phases. When land is rezoned, applicants will be required to enter into a development agreement with the city to secure items like road dedication, park and green space, infrastructure upgrades, and the sequencing and timing of development. This helps ensure that the community needs are, to the extent possible, met before or concurrently as development is occurring. The land use concept provided in the local area plan is a high-level conceptual map illustrating where green space and environmental assets will be preserved, as well as where new streets and connections could potentially be created. There are 2 sub-areas within the land use concept, which are outlined on the screen and include the mixed-use area in orange. This supports apartments, small-scale commercial, and institutional uses, and the multi-unit residential area in purple, which supports apartments, attached housing, and limited commercial uses. Across the entire corridor, the building heights are capped at 6 stories and the maximum density is capped at 2.5 FAR. To avoid piecemeal development, proposals must include at least 2 neighboring lots, and further, all buildings must be located on the lands in order to protect the existing trees and sensitive natural features. A key policy in the plan is that at least 20% of all new homes created must be set aside to directly address one of the city's key local housing needs, such as affordable housing, rental housing, seniors housing, accessible housing, etc. These commitments will be secured through housing agreements that guarantee that the proposed housing types will be in place for at least 20 years. The plan also establishes strong green space buffers between 10 to 30 meters, which are intended to help protect riparian areas and creates better connections between Latoria Creek Park, Havenwood Park, and the broader trail network within the city. This plan is grounded in site adaptive planning principles as well. Buildings will be located in order to fit with the land and must aim to work with the existing natural terrain, reduce blasting, preserve and protect trees, streams, and other natural features. Based on previous environmental studies that have been conducted, staff understand that the current condition of Latoria Creek is in poor and declining health. A major benefit of this plan is that it gives the city a path to fix that. A plan will be created to restore Latoria Creek, and once approved, the city will use funds collected from development projects through development cost charges to help carry out the restoration plan. Importantly, the plan requires Latoria Creek to come under the city's control so that the restoration can happen as one single municipal-led project, as opposed to separate restoration projects led by different owners at different times. Another policy with respect to environment is that all new development proposals will meet flood safety standards, as well as be guided by geotechnical studies to ensure that the projects are safe and environmentally responsible. Tree protection is also another major focus of the local area plan. At least 75% of protected trees within the green spaces must be preserved, and at least 1/3 of the protected trees outside of the green spaces must be preserved. And there's an emphasis on preserving trees that are located near shared boundaries with neighboring properties, as well as within environmentally sensitive areas. The local area plan has been coordinated with the city's transportation master plan update. Through development, the city will secure the land that's needed now for any future transportation upgrades that may be required, including potential upgrades to Latoria Road, as well as key intersections such as Byzantin and Latoria Road. The existing driveways and entry points that are along Latoria Road currently will be combined into fewer shared accesses to improve safety, and new projects will be required to improve transit stops as well. The community's pedestrian and bicycle network will also be improved to make walking and cycling safer, easier, and more connected, and new development must provide safe, continuous pedestrian pathways. That concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for your time. We look forward to hearing your public input.
Thank you very much, Desiree. I'm going to go to public participation. And so for the first time, I'm going to call for the public to provide their input on the proposed bylaw number 1700-14. So for the first time, please. Please.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Caleb Crooks. I live at 3396 Curlew Street in Royal Bay, and I'm here to speak in full support for the proposed amendment to the bylaw. What to me is perhaps most standout is the heavy emphasis on mixed-use buildings, particularly at the corner of Latoria and VMP. What I think is a really helpful analogy to imagine as to what this can evolve into is the Latoria Walk building that already exists on this corner, the one with Red Barn in it. I imagine a half dozen more of those in the area, and that really excites me, frankly. I don't think there's particularly much more that could be necessarily, like, one thing that I would love to see perhaps amended in future and whatnot is actually an expansion of possible commercial spaces, like in the purple area on the map that staff just presented, the opportunity for like limited commercial space. I know that this is something that is quite common for many councils around the region to sort of have this kind of tug and pull with where we allow certain levels of commercial spaces. And frankly, I'm quite excited to see that this proposed amendment, includes some commercial, but I would love to see even more. I think when our OCP talks quite a bit about like creating vibrant and livable community spaces and lots of shared spaces, I think, having ample access to commercial spaces is a great part of that. And noting that when redevelopments come in, that they require 2 or more of those subject lots to be included in their redevelopment. Very few of those properties in total are actually included in that orange section where ground floor commercial is, heavily emphasized. And so I think to prevent ourselves from almost like shooting ourselves in the foot with this a little bit, possibly liberalizing and being a little bit more generous as to the amount of commercial space we allow would be a great direction to go in. I love that this proposal is in walking distance to some of Colwood's greatest, in my opinion, parks and greenery at Latoria Creek and up the hill on Veterans are just lovely areas. And I think it's actually really strong that this proposal is not on a notoriously like busy or noisy road like Souk Road. And I think it's a really great opportunity for the city to show a lot of leadership that, residents who live in denser housing don't necessarily always need to be crammed onto like busy, polluted, and noisy arterial roads, and that we can give, people of all socioeconomic backgrounds living in all types of housing direct access to our best nature and greenways. And I would also note that Colwood is also now the 4th largest municipality in the CRD. And one of the frustrations I have that I know you all share with me is on a regional level, we get the short end of the stick on quite a few things. And to give a really poignant example, like projects like this with BC Transit, for instance, is a fantastic reason for them to see and give them a reason to start investing more into our community with things like improved transit service to this area. I would have it be noted that this corridor along Latoria going up Royal Bay and through Langford is on BC Transit's radar as the future transit network corridor for the Route 52. And developments like this that are very transit supportive are a fantastic signal to show that Colwood has both the aptitude and the desire to push for better improved transit service in the area, which I think is key when we're building more dense projects like this, that we need, public transit and infrastructure to help support that growth. And I think a lot of the onus here is on us to build that city where we can live up to the promises and the ideas that are set out in the OCP. And even once adopted, this bylaw amendment is, for now, words on a sheet of paper. And that, what it represents, though, is the direction that Colwood can move in to create a much more accessible, livable, and sustainable city that is available to everyone. And so I'd like to thank you and suggest and recommend to approve this bylaw when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Jim Day, 3546 Charlie Place. Most effective development. 6-story buildings proposed for our backyard will completely remove our sunlight for most of the year. We have a large lot, as most people do, on Charnley and along Bunker, and sunlight will be removed. Then there's even talk of the ridiculous 4 stories going to 6, going to 8. Each end of Latoria Road had development approval for almost 15 years, and nothing has been built on either property. 3584 Wishart rezoned to CD17 in November 2010. It is still not built on due to soil instability, despite 150,000 cubic meters of fill, approximately 15,000 tandem dump truck loads of fill, forever damaging an existing wetland. 594 Latoria, rezoned in April 2011. Lots been clear cut, road allowance sold to 594, and it's been clear cut. Lots of blasting, but not much accomplished. The Wishart end of Latoria Road has a large floodplain And as it is obviously a floodplain, there are no existing homes built in this floodplain. VMP and of Latoria has been devastated by the clear cutting and blasting to build a needless $8.5 million double roundabout and a needless road going to wetland on the Olympic View site. I think it's blocked off either for safety or to stop shortcutting to the golf course. It's going to be dangerous when it gets going. Current for PLA form, for subdividing your property, you have to tell if it's in a floodplain. But now we have a new OCP amendment form, and it doesn't even ask if the property's in a floodplain. It appears the OCP amendment is meant to generate more traffic on VMP. Presently, most of the traffic leaving the Pleasanton intersection heading to Victoria will either take Wishart to Carindale to VMP or carry on Wishart to Machosen Road to Souk. The existing residents probably use VMP to Latoria when returning from Victoria to avoid being rear-ended as they're pulling in. The residents that would enter the intersection from the north side, the proposal of the intersection, will probably do the same as the south side to get to Victoria. They'll use Wishart to Machosen to Souk, or they'll use Wishart to Carindale to VMP. But they will not use VMP to get home because they'll be rear-ended going into their place because it's deadly on Latoria to make left turns. And this is going to generate so much problems. And there's no acknowledgement that this is actually a floodplain. It's a denial, an absolute denial, even though you can see it by going there. Every person that describes it as a floodplain. There's 6 meters of peat there. How are you going to make a building stand up in that? 150,000 cubic meters in a couple of years' work, and they couldn't build a place for townhouses on the first lot. What's the rest of that canvas going to look like? So it is a real mistake, and there just isn't room in the allocation for sewer capacity in Colwood for such a development because so much has already been approved over and above the allocation of sewer limits for Colwood. It's going to destroy the existing neighborhood, no doubt. It's going to make Latoria Road ugly, no doubt. It's going to add traffic to Machosen Road. It's going to create more problems. This is at the... I'll carry on next time.
Thank you very much. Next, please. Anybody else wish to speak? Please.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. My name is Rachel Sansom of 149 Waypine Terrace, but I'm here tonight representing the owners and agents of 532, 538, and 542 Latoria Road. Unfortunately, they were unable to attend this evening and they send their regrets. They wish to thank Mayor and Council, City staff, and members of the public for the ongoing efforts on the proposed North Latoria area plan. The collaborative efforts between council, staff, the public, and the developers group has been thorough and addresses all the potentials and issues and benefits of this proposed plan. Extensive studies have been conducted regarding traffic, the environment, and the appropriate amenities, which we trust will give council confidence that the proposed area plan as proposed is appropriate. While there's much work ahead in the zoning and development permit processes, we believe the outcomes will have long-term benefits not only to the future residents of this area, but all of Colwood. We're looking forward to delivering high-quality development within this framework. There's a fine balance between the cost of delivered quality housing and providing affordable housing options infrastructure, and environmental enhancements. Much work has been done to consider traffic and infrastructure needs, as well as research into appropriate amenity charges and affordable housing contributions. We appreciate that staff and council have worked to ensure these projects can be financially viable in these difficult economic times. This can only be achieved through cooperation and consideration of all parties, and we're fortunate that Colwood understand this balance. To this end, we are in support of the local area plan as presented. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Kia Simonson. I did submit an email last night about 9 p.m. I wasn't sure if it was received. Okay, it was. So I'm standing here today, resident of 521 Elizabeth Ann Drive, directly next to the park, directly next to this proposed development. I've been there for going on 17 years, raised my family, and I'm in opposition of this, the way it is, with it being 6 stories. I don't believe that that height is appropriate. It's single family homes around there, and going from single family homes to a 6-story building, in my opinion, not only looks bad, but it just isn't right. It seems out of character for Colwood, and it seems kind of like they're making up for lost time. Like, why didn't they build 6-story buildings more in the city centers? I feel like maybe time has passed and there's no more room to do that, so they're just sticking them here. That's the way it feels. Anyways, I don't have much else to say, just that I oppose it the way it is. I'm happy with development happening, more housing, more diversity in housing, and I believe that 4 stories would be appropriate for this area and no higher. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Kia. Next, please.
Good evening, Your Honor, Your Worship, Council, staff. I am owners of 554 and 546 Victoria, one of the proponent investors for development in this area. Just a couple of key things that I think I want to share with some of the comments tonight. First of all, very appreciative of the staff's effort and the leadership that the council has shown to give that staff the direction to carry out the detailed work that's been done over the last 2.5, 3 years to get to this point. So I think that needs some recognition. And I also appreciate our consultants, engineers, and technical people that verify and support the engineering and technical work that the city is doing. There's a comment that was made about sewers. There's a very good report in the information submitted and given to the public tonight about sanitary sewers that John Rasenberg, I'm sure, had his fingerprints and has done numerous times information around sewers that even with the fulsome of development as visioned in the North Latoria project and including the Royal Bay completion, we're still less than 50% capacity in sanitary sewer usage volumes. So I want to mitigate that concern, at least to council and staff, I think already are aware. The other thing, the leadership to have developers work together as a team is one of the first I've seen in many years of experience in development, and which was led by John Rosenberg and the planning department. Mara and Desiree really facilitated this willingness to work with us as a one group. And what that actually led to is the outcome of Latoria Road, that 30 meters, which is 100 feet of land that is being given up by all those landowners, me being one of them, but all of the developers are willing to give up 100 feet of that land so that the city isn't restricted on whatever width of road they choose to build on, be it 2, 3, 4, or 5 lanes. The point is, it's not being done one lot at a time. It has the vision of a long-term transportation plan. And I think that's demonstrating pure leadership, because that's the exact opposite of the problem we have on the chosen road, because we have all these individual issues. So I think most people understand what a 100-foot wide strip of land over 700 meters long is worth, and the value of that. The other thing is, we talk about diversity in housing. Well, the reason we are promoting 6 and even 8 stories, I'll be one of the ones that tells you I think we should be building 8 stories, is because by going vertically, it allows us to retain the green spaces in a diversified way. So by creating the number of buildings and units that we can create on this 20 acres of land, it actually allows for 50% of that land to retain as green space and pathways and walkways. I personally feel that's a much better version of development than the urban sprawl of single family homes that unfortunately take up a lot of land for very few families. And I think everybody's aware of the cost of housing. And the other part of it is, housing is that $1 million plus infrastructure per unit. These types of homes are half that cost, which does put many more people into the homes. The second part of it is our vision and my vision that we'll have the diversity of this housing to support seniors housing, as well as medical and wellness facilities, which this young man, and I don't know him, but I appreciate his comments. We also believe that that first floor commercial can lead to those medical spaces, to those wellness spaces, be it, you know, massage therapies, um, daycares, seniors daycares. And we have to think in a broader way that when a 55-year-old woman has a spouse that ends up with early dementia, what does she do? Because she still has to go out and work during the day, and the husband needs a place to be looked after. Well, that's what those seniors daycares do. And those are new concepts to a lot of people. But when we start talking about development and diversity, we need to look at that type of living spaces as well, not just single family homes. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll be happy to come up again as I hear more comments. Thank you.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, please, first round still. Has any person virtually want to speak? Do you know?
Currently, no one has their hand up, but I'd ask anybody online to press 9 or to raise your hand if you're on the Zoom if you'd like to speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will go to the my second call to the public. If you wish to provide some input to the proposed bylaw. So this is my second call, please. So those that want to speak a second time, or someone that was shy in the first round, please, you're welcome to come up the second time, please.
Hi, I've got a lot to say. Let's start with the sewers. Colwood purchased sewer capacity for 3,000 units. And up until very recently, this month, council and the public have been unaware of how many houses per year have been built in Colwood. I've always heard the number 300, and all the calculations are always based on 300. But now we know, since 2023, over 600 houses a year are being built in Colwood. This year will be another 600. As far as sewer flows, it takes a while for the sewer flows to come online. The sewer flows from this year are from the development last year, those homes that are occupied from last year. The ones being built have no people in them, but they will have sewer flows. So it only adds up to around 3,000 regardless of how you get there. Royal Bay is 6,000, not counting what's in North Latoria, the real North Latoria, not this North Latoria corridor. The only place in Colwood that has frequent bus service is downtown. Staff has done nothing to provide any direction to council of where the density should be. We get all these odd things, 6 stories in existing residential development. When the OCP was added up by Colliers in 2018, they stated that 4,307 houses would be built. And so I've given you a copy of all that they got to that 4,307. And you'll also notice they didn't have the Esquimalt Lagoon. They're missing about 4,000 houses in Royal Bay. This is another 12 to 1,400 houses of auto-dependent urban sprawl in a rural neighborhood that should be preserved. It should have been a little more sensitively developed on the south side of the road. Going into a floodplain and saying you're conscious of the environment are not the same. It's a floodplain. You've got to admit it's a floodplain. As far as sewer flows, for whatever reason in Colwood, they try to extrapolate from sewer flows to how many houses have been built. Well, actually, how many houses have been built is a record. Sewer flows are affected by drought. And this year is a record drought. So you should expect low flows this year. This is the first year our giant sequoias dropped. Even our hedges have turned red. And last year was the same. So if you're going by sewer flows, you're missing the boat because that is going to catch up. Unless we go to a permanent drought forever, but then we're more likely to get winter storms. And right now, that second lot from Wishart gets flooded with the rain. And that's why the house has been abandoned. You have to drive up the driveway, you're in water. And that's not in the winter. The water table in those fields is around ground level. A horse can only go down there in the summer. All those properties were horse properties, and they had to have land on the high side above 64 meters, which is the flood control level, 2 meters higher than the road. They said they expect Colwood to pay for raising that road 2 meters. And that's only going to add more and more problems as you try to squish that peak down. And it's been a disaster since the start. The best they could do would be to provide bike lanes. Latoria is a very dangerous road, and VNP is a very uninviting road. There are parks, Havenwood and Latoria, but you wouldn't use VNP. You wouldn't use, for whatever reason, in these designs, the Latoria Creek is removed from every drawing. But if this generous 30-meter buffer that is a present to all this Colwood doesn't even have the creek in it. The creek is 34 meters from the road at one spot, yet they'll give 30. And who's going to be responsible for building this wetland back? You can see what happened at the first lot. They poured fill right into it, and now there's permanent damage to the wetland because the fill is right into the wetland. You can see it's a year-round pond there, wetland by anyone's standards. There's no room on that lot to contain or treat runoff from that property, and it's flooding the guy next door because it's lowered the land and tilted the driveway. There's nothing but problems from going into those fields, and that's why they don't build homes there. The other end is harder ground, but then you have that roundabout and causing even more problems there. Unfortunately, it wasn't built as a T intersection, which would have made so much more sense. It could have been covered by DCCs. I've tried, but I can't find where the 8.5 million came from to finance that. But it was way more than the total collected DCCs.
Thank you very much. Again, for the second time, call for the public. Anyone wish to speak at this time? Okay. Second, just make sure no one online wants to
I
speak.
don't see any hands raised online again.
Okay.
If you'd like to raise your hand, you press 9.
So I will call for the third and final time for the public to provide their input on the proposed bylaw number 1700-14, please. Third and final time. Anyone wish to come up and speak? Please. If you want to press the button there. Perfect.
There we go. Hi, my name is Michael Carruthers. I live at 3611 Kaiser Lane. I actually came in here initially to be an outright opposition, but after going through the plan, actually, I'm quite excited for it. That said, I do have some concerns. In particular, we have a history here in the West Shore of not thinking longer than how long the council's in tenure. And we often see developments happen without infrastructure being upgraded. If, for example, you look at the Chosen Road and you look at Veterans Memorial Parkway, the argument could be made veterans is sufficient, sure, but we look at the Chosen and with the completion or near completion rather of Royal Bay, we still don't have much in the way of improvements. My concern is, especially with the construction, we're going to make that problem much larger than it is currently. So, if there is any thought to that, I would love to hear it as somebody who lives in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, for the third and final time. Okay.
Thank you again, Your Worship, council staff. Just some conclusions around transportation, because I read that as a theme through all the comments. And so I think those are important concerns because we have to understand that we're adding more residents, meaning more traffic. But one of the things that I am aware of, which maybe some of the people in the room aren't aware and it wasn't presented, is we did do a traffic impact analysis of Latoria Road. And it included, for example, a signalized intersection at Wishart, a signalized intersection at Byzanton, and predominantly there could even be one even north on Veterans Memorial, and that's still to be seen. But when it comes to traffic and roads, I think council does have some really important decisions to make to deal with not just this proposal of in growth and development, but all the other ones that are surrounding. I will say that the plan right now, as I see it, is to reduce the amount of accesses off of Latoria Road in this North Latoria zone. So there won't be those driveways impacting those dangerous potential turns that we communicated earlier. I also see that there's, again, a vision for a potential 3, 4, and 5 lane road. I also see that there's room for a shared pathway, both bikes and walking, that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to the side of the road, but can be farther up on the green space, which also is leading to parks and recreation spaces. So the transportation conversation, I think, is legitimate from naysayers and positive people thinking about it, and I think it's a realistic concern. I will say, going through the process that I have seen our engineering department in Colwood go through, it is exhaustive as a receiver of that information and what we're asked to provide. And it's done with high-level technical engineering people that is received by city technical and engineering people. And I do have faith in the process that that group aren't part of the historical Mochosen issues, but more around, I would promote their understanding and learning from those mistakes, where we have to start taking a look at long-term transportation modal corridors and be part of the plan. And if you read the plan very much talks about how we move people in and around North Latoria, but also benefit the rural bays, the people from Machosen, because obviously people from different areas are going to use those road networks. So this does provide some relief for those transportation woes that are experienced in other places. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Again, for the third and final time, please.
Yeah, a couple of things came to mind. The Royal Bay has the worst sewage flow problems, and that it's got to pump it up the hill, up Machosen Hill. So that takes a lot of horsepower. Right now, it's 88 horsepower. They're going to have to up it to 250 horsepower. It's going to take $5 million to build a plant. Well, this is all feeding into the Royal Bay and being pumped up the hill. So it couldn't be a worse place for development. All the improvements were required in Royal Bay and along Machosen Road to up the sewer size, and it's going to be so expensive. You'll never collect enough in sewer user fees, and sewer users in a few years are going to see it that, hey, we're going to go in to start paying fines because we're building 600 units a year, and the flows are going to go over, and they're going to pay triple the rate for treating the water over the above allocation. The allocation is low because Colwood decided they could build their own sewage treatment plant. And believe it or not, it was going to be in the basement at Colwood Corners of that 27, 29-story building. It's hard to believe. I hear the basement's full of water, but how you would get a sewage treatment plant in there, I don't know. But even in Colwood Corners, you don't have 6-story buildings. And it's the only area, I think they're 5-story, 4 or 5-story. And it's the only area serviced by bus. It's where you should be developing. You shouldn't be wasting sewer capacity on the farthest reaches of Colwood on a road that has always been a problem since it was built. It was better when it was gravel. It was easier to fix. But now it's settling. It's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be expensive. Building that intersection will be crazy. And I really am offended by the creek being removed from the drawings and replaced by a stick thing that's supposed to imply a path. And you can't have a path in the creek. And it's drawn going up through a private property and carrying on. I don't think anyone's ever been down to the end of Bunker Road. But if you walk down to the end of Bunker Road, go and work your way to the creek if you're really nimble and see where you would build the path. Big rock face on the other side, big trees, is all muddy in there. Why would you have a path in an area like that? It's for wildlife. We need to do something for wildlife. So much habitat was destroyed on the south side of the road that something needs to happen. We don't have the sewer capacity to entertain every possible development. It was already spoken for in 2018. All these things are added and added as if there's going to be a magic solution. There is no magic solution. They could have in Royal Bay, had they been a little smarter, it would have added to their cost of building the houses, but they could have separated their gray water from their sewer early on. They could have really cut down on their sewer flows out of Royal Bay, take that gray water and treat it on site. They wouldn't have the flows out of Royal Bay. But there's so much underway, and no one wants to spend a dime. They don't want to have separate gray water because no one cares until it's over. And by the time you figure out that it's going to be over in a couple of years, it'll be way too late. And I'm not sure what will happen then. We'll have this higgly of things that are happening like on Souk Road. Those poor people that live there, they'll never see the sunlight again. And the crash zone up front, that's not going to be good for anyone. Right in, right out, or U-turns or whatever you want to call it there. It's inappropriate. It doesn't have frequent bus service. These town centers are just drawn on the map. They're drawn anywhere. They don't make any sense. The same as the one at the lagoon. Makes no sense. It only causes problems. They weren't in that calculation of how the 4,700, 4,307 units were going to be in the OCP.
Thank you very much. Okay, third and final call from anyone that wishes to provide their input.
Hi there, I'm Dwayne Chapman. I'm from Kaiser Lane, just up from Latoria. And I guess I just want to echo the common theme of transportation. It's not that I'm anti-development, but since living in Colwood, we moved into Royal Bay, the upper part. We had a house. There was going to be 2,300 houses in the whole valley. There was going to be apartments down towards the water. There was going to be Fisherman's Wharf. I bought into that concept. I thought, wow, we're gonna have like a downtown area. We're gonna have this. We're gonna have that. I've been here for a few years, and now Royal Bay is double, triple, quadruple the density originally it was gonna be. Um, so then we downsized. We moved up to our townhouse. We're just surrounded by just all of a sudden our area is rezoned higher density. We got this big apartment right on our sidewalk, another unit at the end of the street. We want to put another 100 units in with basically 100 parking spots. We only have one way out, which has been Zanton onto Latoria. And then, this development, it sounds really nice, thought out, but in all of these different pieces, whether it's this, Royal Bay, we just aren't building the infrastructure to get out. So you could build Latoria with that 30-meter buffer, make it whatever, but still, we've built so much, but there's still only one Veterans Memorial. There's only one Super Road. There's only one Wishart. There's just no other egress in and out of the west shore of the Colwood area. And it's already dangerous trying to make a left turn at Benzanton without a traffic signal. I've almost been hit a few times. And then, last week we lost a little bit of a lane to go off before we go up Benzanton, which I always wanted to do because I don't want to get rear-ended because there's a lot of cars flying by at morning, afternoon, and evening with the schools. And now we lost that to a bike lane. So now I have to make a more dangerous, quick right onto that street. So I want a lot of thought into the infrastructure that needs to support all this housing because it's getting really scary. And man, I go back to Calgary once in a while and I'm like, man, it's so nice. They got roads here. You can get around. You're not constantly in construction. And anyway, a lot of people I talk to, we all feel the same in the West Shore. It's like, when are we gonna, if we're gonna build the if we're gonna build the buildings and the density, we got to build the infrastructure because people are still gonna drive a car, whether it's electric, gas, and it's not gonna be everyone hopping on a bicycle. So that's just what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jane Chapman, and I live at 3615 Kaiser Lane. I know that the dream for Royal Bay was for it to be a destination for people to come. And it is a beautiful place. It's such beautiful scenery down at the beachlands. But I too have such a concern about the rate of development and the increase in transportation. If people can't get to the destination, they're not going to come. So if we don't do something with the roads and the amount of the speed of development, it's going to be for nothing because people aren't going to want to come. They won't be able to get there. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, transportation is going to be an issue if we don't be very careful with how development is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will provide some clarification. I'll admit I live on Byzantine Way, and you guys weren't even there when I first moved in. There was nothing there. It was really nice then. But just clarification right now, I really would like to invite you to look at our TMP, our Transportation Master Plan, because you'll see what we plan to do right now. We do plan to do widening of VMP, Latoria Road. and Machosen potentially also up to 3 lanes. So I just invite you to do that, because if you're new here, a lot of people don't realize that. And there's certain things that will trigger it. When there's a 60% build out, that would trigger it. I would imagine with this particular development going in, it's gonna probably accelerate intersections at Byzantine, for example. So believe me, we are doing something about it. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, just for clarification. Okay, thank you. Please.
Steve Mandy. I also live on Byzantine, not far from you. Like yourself, we gamble with our lives every time we turn left and sometimes right onto Latoria from Byzantine. That needs to be adjusted before all this development. Because as it is right now, you look at all of the construction workers, people who drive their kids to and from school at those peak periods, they're racing to get to work, to get to school. Something has to be done. It's plain and simple. You live it every day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. Okay, please.
Yeah, so for all those residents, including yourself, your worship, I am directly involved with the city engineering department on a signalized intersection for Byzantine, literally right now. So it is coming, and there's no reason why that intersection wouldn't come ahead of the development, because the roads have to come before the buildings. So I know technically about Byzantine specifically, because those are the properties that I'm directly involved with, and my friends that are the people that hold the lands beside me are involved in those same meetings, because we share the cost of that intersection and that road. So I don't want that to necessarily sway people, but I definitely want people to be aware that we're very conscientious about that intersection.
If you can address us, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, third and final time. Third and final. Okay, nothing virtual. Okay, there being no further input, I will declare this public hearing closed. And I thank everyone very much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate the feedback. We were listening. Thank you.